Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by prospect experts here at the Hockey Writers, Peter Baracchini and Dayton Reimer. Guys, we're recording this just after the draft lottery, and it was pretty, wasn't exciting at all. It was very, nothing changed. The order that was set for the odds stayed the same. So, San Jose Sharks get the first overall pick, having the worst record in the NHL this season and the best odds, so they won it. And Chicago Blackhawks second overall, and the Anaheim Ducks third, and then it goes down from there, from where it goes. So the top three stayed from where they were in the standings. I'll start with you, Peter. Any reaction to it? I mean, like I say, this is probably the biggest surprise is that nothing changed, I guess. But
yeah, that basically is the biggest surprise, that there was no massive jump or no massive order change. I mean, everything went according to how it should have gone in terms of like the order. It started with 16 with the St. Louis Blues all the way up, and I think there were a little bit of some nervous moments when there was that leaked picture that went out there that Utah got the second pick, but San Jose still got first and everything like that. And everyone was just talking about it. Everyone was obviously, thinking worst case scenario, but no, everything worked out very well. And yeah, I actually, you know what, thinking about that, we were talking off air that, we're happy that there was no chaos, but I would have liked some chaos. At least talk about it. There's really not much to say. I mean, San Jose had arguably one of the worst seasons ever, and they basically got rewarded for it. And it's basically kind of a homecoming too for Macklin Celebrini, because Dad has connections with being a part of the Golden State Warriors organization within that area. So you know what, there's some familiarity there. And you know what, San Jose Sharks just got basically a hell of a prospect right now, because we know how talented he is, we know how good he is. And he's just, I don't know. I would assume maybe he can make the jump to the NHL, but we'll see what happens. But you know what? They got a really talented player on their hand.
Dayton, sounds like it's going to pick Celebrini for sure. What do you think about Chicago now that they are set in that second overall pick, Anaheim third? Where do you see Chicago going with their pick? Because there are quite a few different guys they could go after.
Yeah, they've got a really interesting set of options ahead of them, because they don't have the choice taken from them. There's a lot of different guys who could be second overall. I think the favorite, or at least our favorite, is Ivan Demidov. He's too good. That is such a skilled player. He's such a skilled kid. You put him beside someone like Bedard, like you're going places.
Yeah.
But maybe they could use some defense, especially on the right side. They've got Kevin Korchinski. It's a great left-handed defenseman. What about putting him beside someone like Artem Levshunov? That's not a bad pick either. So I would probably lean between those two guys, but I could also see them taking Caden Lindstrom for some of the toughness. I could see them going for someone like Anton Salayev, just for that size. It's really tough to pass up, especially when you combine it with all of his skill and his ability to shut down. So I think they'd go Demidov, just really build up that forward core, but they have lots of really good options.
Yeah, and Anaheim, we'll stop here. We're not going to go through the whole 16, but Peter, where do you think Anaheim would go with that? I mean, they're getting last year they had the second overall pick and went with Carlson. And now they have so many forwards. They have really good forward depth. Do they go for a defenseman? Because there's going to be, if Chicago goes with Demidov, then they've got the pick of the litter of all the best defensemen in this draft, and there's a lot of them. Do you see Anaheim going for defense? Their defense for prospects is pretty good too. I don't know. Where do you see them going?
I mean, you basically said it right there. Yeah, they got a ton of forward depth. I mean, obviously, the addition of Cutter Gauthier just makes him that much more deep. Obviously, I really love the Leo Carlson selection. I was a big fan of his, but I kind of would have thought they would have gone Adam Fantilli. But, things happen. That's the whole beauty of the NHL draft. Players can move up, they can move down. You would think that they're pretty much set on defense as well with, the likes of Pavel Mintyukov. They have Olin Zellweger. You got depth players like Tristan Luneau, Noah Warren. They have a lot of great talented players on the back end. And, you can whatever happens, it's going to be based on what Chicago does. If they take Ivan Demidov, then I 100%, not 100%, but I would think that Artem Lashunov probably would be a really good, decent right-handed option because I would have to go back and look at the handedness, but I think Luneau and Olin Zellweger are the only two right-handed shots, if I'm not mistaken. No, so Olin Zellweger is a left shot. So this would bode well for them. They have a really solid one in Tristan Luneau, but you could have Artem Lashunov as that top pairing defender, a player that could do it all. And, I was a little hesitant on his play at first, but he really took storm during this final stretch and into the NCAA playoffs. Really showing that he can be a top 3 pick. And if he falls into the Anaheim Ducks lap, they again, kind of like up front with Cutter Gauthier, they would have an abundance of riches on the back end. So it's all going to be dependent on what happens with Chicago. But if Chicago takes Demidov, then Lashunov 100%. If not, then I'm pretty sure they wouldn't mind taking Demidov.
Yeah, and get more depth for their forward group. It's funny, Columbus is going right after them again, just like happened in the last draft. So we'll see where it all plays out. It seems like the same teams, except San Jose isn't right at the top. In the last draft it was these teams too, so nothing really changed. Utah, Arizona, they were up higher, but yeah, we'll see how it all goes. And we're going to do a mock draft next week now that we have the set lottery picks. So we'll do an actual mock draft with this so we'll talk about this again. But yeah, it wasn't very exciting watching the draft lottery this year. There wasn't a lot of stuff. And I'm happy because the Canucks weren't involved in it because they're in the playoffs. So that's first time in a long time we're able to say that. And Ottawa didn't move anywhere from their 7th overall pick. So there was people talking maybe they'll get lucky and move up, but stay at 7. And that's another discussion for the Senators Roundtable. You guys can talk about picking where they're going to pick. So we'll see how it all plays out now that we have the order for the lottery picks. All right, for the rest of the show, we're going to talk about the under 18s, which just wrapped up on Sunday, I believe. Yeah, it was on Sunday. And gold medal went to Canada in a pretty high-scoring game, 6-4 against the United States. Lots of offense, lots of, maybe not unexpected. Both those teams have a ton of offensive talent, and both of them had a lot of guys in the top 10 in scoring. So I'll start with you, Peter. We'll start with the gold medal game. What did you think about the game and the performances from the both sides there?
I mean, doesn't get any better than that. It's been a long time coming. I mean, since 2020, I believe, since Canada won the gold medal, when they had that stacked team of Bedard, Wright, Othman, Zellweger, all those players that Logan Stankoven, Wyatt Johnson, a lot of those top name players that really deserved gold, and they beat out Russia at that moment. This kind of had that exact same feel where Team USA had a lot of dominant players from that NTDP program with the likes of, Cole Yzerman, James Higgins, Teddy Stiga, Brody Zemer, a lot of the players that are both up for next year and this year's draft. Canada on the other side, TJ Ginla was phenomenal. You had Carter George stand up very, very tall, make a couple of highlight reel saves in that game alone. And there was a reason why he was named top goaltender as a result of that, because of the way he carried the load, the way that he was relied upon. And he made a lot of key saves for Team Canada at that moment. But yeah, it was very entertaining. USA went up to a big lead. Canada clawed their way back. There was that costly penalty that Trevor Connolly took, and that basically opened the floodgates for Canada, where they took advantage of that power play, and that was the big difference ultimately. And yeah, very, very exciting game. Great plays, great skill on both sides, but Canada just had that extra motivation and that advantage with that power play at the end.
For sure. And lots of big performances throughout the tournament for Canada. And Dayton, we've talked about this guy, and he's not eligible until 2026. And that is Gavin McKenna. 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points in the tournament. I mean, how much more can you say about this guy? He's dominating now. What do you think about his performance? I mean, the stats pretty much speak for themselves.
Yeah, very dominant. He really established himself as basically a generational talent. I don't know how much more he could have done. He set a Canadian record for the most points in a tournament. I mean, his teammate, Porter Martone, also set a record, but McKenna passed him already. 20 points, 7 games. Like, that's ridiculous. That's higher than a lot of, well, if he set the record for Canada, it's higher than anyone else who would have played there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of really good names who've played in the under 18s. So I don't know how much other people need to prove to fight him for the first overall in 2026.
Yeah, right.
I think he's already a favorite. I don't see how much could change since or between now and then. So
yeah. And well, he's only going to get better, right? I mean, what is he going to do with the World Juniors? And
he's on a really young Tigers team, and they are just going to go nuts next year. Almost guaranteed. Like, you're going to have hopefully a healthy Caden Lindstrom, a more experienced Andrew Basha. There's a couple of really young kids who I can't recall their name right now, but they're also 2026 eligible, who are just coming up. They're twins. So I feel like you'd like that there as a Canucks fan. They picked him in the Bantam draft. Yeah, really, really interesting team. Really, really skilled. They are going to be one to watch, and McKenna's going to be the center of it. They've built a team to take the WHL by storm.
Yeah, it should be exciting to watch him in the next few years. It's already exciting to watch him. So, yeah, let's turn back to the 2024 draft though. Peter, who increased their stock the most throughout this tournament? I have one name already. That's Cole Eiserman. We talked about him maybe dropping off. He had 9 goals, second in the goals, tied with James Higgins, his teammate. And I mean, the states were stacked, but Eiserman, I mean, we know he can score, but he kind of solidified again that he can score. He's gotten 9 goals in 7 games. Who else kind of increased their stock apart from him? You can talk about him if you want to, but
see, here's the thing. We're probably going to talk a lot or put a lot of focus on, Canada and US. I do think Cole Eiserman increased his stock a little bit, where maybe instead of being outside the top 10, he may have pushed himself back into it because he showed a little bit more of that physicality, using that size to his advantage, being more of, of a versatile threat. Because I know we just questioned about his shot and how he wasn't engaged in certain areas. I thought he did a good job of, stepping it up. And even so, he wasn't even on a line with James Higgins. So he was absolutely dominant and carrying his own weight. Obviously, you leave him wide open on a power play, that puck's going into the net. I really thought he really stepped it up. And I think whatever is said or done in final rankings, I think it may have had a say, or if it's already out, maybe teams will take that into effect, because you can't deny that shot. You can't deny his offensive abilities. I really do think TJ Ginla really improved the stock to maybe being a top 10 player. That tournament alone, I mean, we sat here, we talked about him, how great he was in the WHL. I think this tournament alone really solidified himself as a top 10 pick because of that tenacity, the work ethic, the skill that he could possess and push everybody back and open up space for himself and his teammates. instead of possibly being a player outside of the top 10 or like in that 10 to 15 range, I think he's really in that 5 to 10 range. And there's definitely going to be a team that's going to take him. And lo and behold, Calgary's number 9. Wouldn't it be great to have a Ginla reunion in Calgary right there? But yeah, he was definitely one player that really stood out, that really made an impact and most likely improved the stock to being a little bit higher up than where he usually is right now.
Yeah, definitely were standouts during the tournament, and Neka Ginla, who was on my the Twitter feed quite a bit. I saw quite a bit of time. Of course, McKenna was too, but yeah, lots. He was really good, so I wouldn't be surprised to be jumped up for teams, for sure. Dayton, what about you? Is there anyone that kind of stood out as increasing their stock for you?
Yeah, I think Ryder Ritchie did quite a bit to show that he is a top 20 pick. I don't know if that was guaranteed before heading into this. But I did notice that he is starting to come into his own as a play driver and someone who can make things happen when he's on the ice. He was somebody I really noticed in when I watched some of the Saskatoon Blades first round series against the Prince Albert Raiders. He was one who stuck out. The Raiders didn't look super strong. He did. And I think he was the big reason why they were able to even win a single game against them. Another one I think has increased his stock is Lucas Pettersson, who could be the first Swede off the board. It's not guaranteed. There's not a lot of high-end Swedes heading into the draft this year. Lucas Pettersson is making a case to be one of them. He led the Swedes in scoring with 8 points, tying Melvin Fernstrom. Fernstrom has a few other maybe concerns, if you want to call them that have kept him outside of the first round for now. Maybe he's a first round pick, but I've read some stuff that maybe he still isn't quite there. Pettersson, however, I think has shown that he should be a first round pick.
Yeah, we've talked about him being in that area too. For Swedes, it's Lucas Pettersson's probably going to be high up on teams' list as being probably the first off the board for Swedes. But yeah, there are a few other names there that could potentially, but I think probably Pettersson will be the first one. We'll see.
I was just about to say Alphonse Frey really stood out on the back end with his mobility. Considering how it's going to be a drafted defenseman, I think he could possibly push Pettersson in order to be that top Swede.
Yeah, he'd be the top competition for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And Cole Hudson, I thought was really good too. I mean, 4 goals, 13 points in the 7 games, and we've talked about it. Maybe his offense kind of dropped off. That's why he's been dropping on rankings. But that's a good omen maybe for the future that he was able to do it in this tournament. We'll see what he does. I mean, this is the last real big push for increasing stock, I guess. So we'll see where he goes in the draft. Again, his size is probably going to dictate that. But we'll see. I think he's still probably pushing, if it's not end of first round, it's probably early second. I don't know if he'll drop as far down as Lane did, but he may. I mean, you never know with the size these days. But all right, before we finish up here, anyone else you kind of want to mention for the tournament? I mean, it doesn't have to be draft eligible, just anyone that kind of stood out for you. I'll start with you, Dayton. Is anyone else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll briefly mention Trevor Connolly. He did have a strong tournament, but I also think he didn't improve his stock still. I think that game misconduct at the very end kind of showed that he isn't really fully in control. I think there is a lot of personal concerns that he didn't do enough to disprove. And so I think that may have confirmed for some teams who already had him on a no draft list that he's not getting drafted by them. So that's one guy I think maybe made an impact for the worse.
He's going to be a talking point, I think, we've already talked about him. Why he could maybe, he's a wild card where he's going to go in the draft.
If I was drafting for a team, I wouldn't take him in the first round. I know he's got crazy skill. I think there is bigger issues that is going to prevent him from making an impact on an NHL team.
Right.
And that's as far as I'll get into that. Another guy I think maybe didn't do quite enough was Consta Helenius. He had 7 assists, really good. No goals, not as good. I think he needed to be a little bit more impactful for that. And I like him as a top 10 pick. I don't know if he's that anymore after this.
Yeah, this tournament can also make you maybe drop a bit, because it's like, well, you should be at least good and in these types of tournaments, but sometimes they're not. Peter, what about you? Is anyone else you want to highlight here?
Yeah, going back to Sweden, obviously we talked about Fraser and Pedersen, but I really like Jack Berglund's game. I really thought he was a very steady, calm two-way presence for Sweden. Scored a big goal in that bronze medal game to evade pressure and then just rip it from his own blue line. That really stood out about the common poise that he possesses. So I really liked his game. He could probably be late second, early third within that range, but he's definitely got a lot of potential as a very steady two-way centerman. Also a player that could play on the wing, good size as well. So teams are definitely going to look forward to that. And, I'm going to give a special shout out to Aaron Kiviharju. I really thought that, don't know if it really pushed the needle, but I really think it really brought a lot of, a sense of calm to our thoughts about him as a very solid puck mover on the back end. Again, the size is still going to be an issue. Teams are going to have doubts about that, his ability to translate at the next level. But he was still able to dominate and be a big factor for Finland, although they didn't really go far in the tournament. I thought he stood out in a big way. I think that, he needed to come back, especially after the injuries, be a big factor for them. And I believe he finished with 3 points in 2 games. No, 3 points in 5 games. Sorry. Looking at the wrong section there. Again, probably not as much production as you would hoped, or you want to see a little bit more, but I think the common poise on the back end really helped out.
Yeah, Kiviharju, there's another couple wild cards. I think he's definitely another one in the draft of where he's going to go, because he could drop into the second round because of the injuries or injury. But yeah, just maybe being a bit more like in the under 18s. We said if he stood out, he may make it that he doesn't fall as much, but he's still a guy that I think has a lot of talent, and teams would probably be still good to get him, even if it is in, early second round, because I think he's still going to become a top 4 defenseman at some point. And, you can probably a playoff team's going to pick him. So we'll see where he goes. All right, before we close, I want to do a quick one, because the Calder Trophy finalists were announced this past week. Connor Bedard, Brock Faber, and I forgot the third guy.
I believe it was Luke Hughes.
Luke Hughes. All right. Yes, that's right. I shouldn't forget that. Luke Hughes, Connor Bedard, and Brock Faber were the finalists. So, Peter, is it Connor Bedard's? For sure, or they're going to be a surprise?
I really think that it is going to be Bedard, but I think it still maybe be a little bit of I think would be a little bit of a slim margin, because Brock Faber coming up and having the impact that he did is really phenomenal. He already became an important factor for the Wild, earning important minutes. It's tough to find that type of player, or to not acknowledge that as a result of that. Obviously, Bedard being Bedard, even though he was injured, I mean, he still shined offensively for a team that's still, towards the bottom of the standings. And the Minnesota Wild kind of were a little bit competitive, but still can't deny the fact of what Faber did. Same with Luke Hughes. I don't think Luke Hughes is going to win it. It's still going to be Bedard, but I think it's going to be closer with the way that Faber finished off and stood out in the second half.
It's great having 2 defensemen in there too, which it's not always the case. Although McCarr and Hughes Quinn Hughes were Calder, and yeah, it doesn't happen as often. Dayton, do you think it's Bedard's, or does Faber give a push?
Well, the magic number for defensemen is kind of that 50, right? Faber was 3 away. He had 47 points in, was it 82 games? Did he play the whole season? I'm blanking on that now. I just looked at it and I clicked away from the page.
Can you do a quick check?
He played a lot of games.
He played all 82. Yeah.
All 82.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that just kind of reminds me of McDavid's rookie year, where he also had injuries, a lot of points, but he finished third in voting behind Panarin and Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere had 46 points. I think Faber could take it from him. I'm going to be a little bit controversial. I don't think Hughes did quite enough. The Devils were also terrible, which didn't help. But Faber came out and looked immediately like a Calder finalist.
Yeah.
And I think that was enough to take some of the hype away from Bedard. Bedard's going to be fine next year, but I don't know if he wins the Calder.
Yeah, I think that, like I said on another show, I said that it's going to be closer than everyone thinks. I think. I think Bedard's probably still going to take it, but Faber's going to get more first place votes than a lot of people are thinking he will, because he was very impressive. I didn't think he had that much offense in his game from when he was a prospect, but yeah, he definitely does. 47 points, and I mean, if he scores a bit more, he'd be in the 60-70 point range because he's got quite a few assists. So yeah, I think it's going to be closer, and he could win it. Who knows? We may see a surprise. But yeah, I just wanted to say your thoughts on that. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on a quick Prospect Corner. Everyone's used to our 1 hour episodes. This one's just a quick one. But yeah, we'll have a mock draft next week to go through these lottery picks and see where that all goes. But yeah, thanks Peter. Thanks Dayton for going on another show. And make sure to check out all of our stuff at thehockeywriters.com. We've got draft profiles coming out every day. And we're going to starting getting some features out as well. Lots of fun stuff, lots of team content. We're getting all of our writing teams to get going on that as well too. And well, the playoff teams aren't going to be putting out that stuff yet, but when the playoffs are over, then that's where that content will start rolling out as well. So stay tuned for all that. But until next time, we'll see you in another episode of Prospect Corner.